Hey everybody, this is your global survival guide, Ashish Fernando, dialing in straight from Salt Lake City, Utah. Luckily, I'm not in Canada because I don't know what's happening there. I mean, recently with the whole Canada India visa situation happening, and then now recently, Canada this Monday announced a 2-year cap on new international visas, new international permits to Canada, and which is really surprising. I mean, it's not something I'm actually happy talking about, but unfortunately, that's what Canada's done. And what I'm going to do is summarize the new announcements in the immigration policy for you as a student, as somebody who's trying to migrate to Canada. This might come in handy and hopefully useful. So, why is Canada doing this? Let's first talk about it. Canada just recently said that they're going to cap the number of new visas by almost 35%. What that means is they basically want lesser students to come to the country. These are only student visas, and it's also not for every type of student. So if you're going for like your master's program or your PhD program, it does not apply to you. It applies to people in the middle who are mostly in what they call a private public model, but think of it as like your typical like undergrad small courses, those kind of students. It's going to affect you. Like, so if you're going for like an English language program, or you're going to some sort of a school from where you will transfer to a larger public institution in Canada, this will affect you. So I'm going to talk in detail about all of that in this video. So stick on and stay on, and we'll talk about it. So, Canada's immigration minister, Mark Miller, announced this week that
364,000 approved study permits, a decrease of 35% from 2023.
364,000. Why does this number matter? So they say that it's gonna be reduced by 35%. So they had about 500,000 plus permits that they gave to students last year. But I really think, this number has to be looked at carefully, because they're considering the total number of visas, and then, they're saying, okay, it's going to go down by 35%. But then this cap only applies to certain types of programs, and so that 35% might go up or down. But here are the top 3-4 major points that you need to focus on and why it matters to you. Why did Canada decide to reduce the number of student permits? The number one reason, according to government authorities, is the housing shortage. There is a massive housing shortage in Canada, and the local citizens and the population of Canada is actually facing the stress of housing. There are less houses and they're way more expensive. Even renting a house is really not affordable for low and medium income Canadians. And they look at international students who are coming in as a major contributor to rise in prices. Canada is almost 50% of the students who go to Canada are either from India or China, and they have enough means to get a decent house on rent. They stay with other students, and they together buy a house. So it might be expensive, like renting it might be expensive, but when they are 3 or 4 students, it's actually pretty decent cost-wise. But then it affects the local public who's looking for houses. So that's the number one reason. The second reason that the government is quoting is actually the quality of education going down, because what they're saying is that a lot of the students are coming and studying at these really small schools and colleges. Sometimes these colleges don't even have a proper building. They're like inside some strip mall or someplace, and they're charging students a lot of tuition fee, and they're giving them zero facilities, very bad, poor quality education. There's sometimes not even professors on campus, and students don't know it. They come here thinking, oh my God, I'll go to Canada and I will build my life there. And they realize that the institution doesn't even have the basic infrastructure to support them, and then they have to transfer out, but a lot of them are not able to transfer to any school, any college, and they kind of stay around. They're doing small jobs. There's a lot of Canadian international students in Canada who are now doing really small petty jobs, working as drivers, working in small shops. And not to say that it's a bad thing, it's actually a totally fine thing to do as a student. But when a mass volume of students come from outside and start doing those kind of jobs, it actually stresses the economy. And this is the reason why Canada is doing it. So do not consider that Canada, oh my God, this is just a geopolitical issue, and because of what, India did to Canada, Canada did to India. It's none of that. It's really a stress on the economic situation within Canada, and that's the reason it's a choice that Canada made. So what's involved in this? Let's talk about it. So I mentioned housing shortage. Rents, just house rent in Canada has gone up by about 7.5% since last year. 7.5% is a lot when you look at renting a home, especially when you're paying already $4,000-$5,000. 7% really adds up. It adds a few other $100, and that maybe enough to pay for your car insurance, or even actually for your car, like premium for your car loan that people have to now put into their rent for their apartment, and that's causing a problem. So who does the cap apply to? The cap applies to students who are in their college degree or undergrad program, or doing some sort of a basic 1-year program, that kind of stuff. It does not apply to graduate students. It does not apply to PhD students as well. So you do not have to worry. I know most of you who are on the iSchool network as well are applying for grad programs. So you are actually totally fine. There's a little catch to that, but we'll discuss that later. If you are going for your undergrad programs, or you're going for your basic programs there, you have to understand that there are a few things you have to take care of. Now, the cap does not apply overall to all of Canada. The cap is going to apply based on provinces and how many people live in each of the provinces. So it's going to be a ratio of how many permits will be given by province based on how big the province is and what's the population of the province. And so when you apply for your program, if you are not in a grad or a PhD program, then you will have to also apply for a permission from the province. And it's called, it's basically, I forget the name of this document. I was reading about it, but it's something that the province has to approve, and they say that they're going to make provisions for those approvals to happen very quickly. So that's an interesting one. Now, the next rule that is applied is that other than the cap, what's going to happen is that the open work permits that are allowed, basically open work permits are when you can work while you're in Canada on any visa, which is not a PR, permanent residency, or a citizenship. They are going to cap the ability to also work, and so this is going to be a very important one. They will be announcing that open permits will only be allowed to spouses of international students who are in the master's and doctoral programs. Very, very important. If your spouse is if you are studying in an undergrad program and your spouse is looking for jobs, they are not going to be able to get it. Okay, and that's very, very important to know. Certain programs may be exempt, and these are programs like medicine and law, which are very skill specific programs. So you have to be very careful, and you should know that spouse open work permits are no longer going to be available. All right, what's the third thing? So the government is also making changes to the eligibility criteria for post-graduation work permit. So once you have completed your graduation and you apply for work permit, there's a very important date that you have to keep in mind, which is 1st of September of this year, 2024. 1st of September 2024, international students with permits to study at private institutions, if you're already there, if you're at a privately owned institution, you will no longer be eligible for postgraduate work permits. And this is a very important rule that is going to fall in place. So just know that all of what I'm saying applies to students who are going to come in most cases. It's not going to apply if you're already in Canada, if you've already got your visa, you're already studying. This is all the next 2-year plan. They're going to experiment this over 2 years, and if they see that it's actually de-stressing the economy and it's actually de-stressing the housing market, they're going to do it. And there's also a chance that they might extend it to more programs, but we hope they don't do that, right? So another change is that the open work permit will now only be available, like I said, to spouses of international students in master's and doctoral programs, and so you have to be very careful if you're bringing your spouse, whether they need to work and how is that gonna be. I also feel like, you know, when the UK made some changes to how spouse work permits work, suddenly Canada took literally a page from their book and just applied it to Canada. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are some changes in the United States as well. But you know what, guys? In the end, every country needs international students, and that's just how it works. International students they make up a lot, like almost 5 to 10% of the economy, jobs, and there are certain specialized skills that only international students are specialized to work in. And that's why you don't have to worry about what's going to happen to you once you complete your education. What you have to understand is that when you pick a school, you have to pick the right school, and you have to know that it's a credible brand, and that once you complete your education, you can apply to jobs and you can actually get through and be successful in getting your post-study work permit and your PR and stay there. So make sure you talk to experts, you talk to consultants before you make your decision of going to Canada to study. Okay, and that's very important to understand. So what's important to know is when you apply to a school, the province has to give you an attestation and an attestation letter that suggests that there is still some vacancies for permits within the cap, and that you can get the permit to attend the institution within that province. And so you should look at it carefully, and just know that starting January 22nd, which is already a past date, all these rules apply. Another important change that has happened that a lot of the articles and the news channels are not talking about is that the IRCC, which is the Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, they have doubled the cost of living requirement from 10,000 Canadian dollars to 20,635 Canadian dollars. This is very important, and you need to be able to show that you have this money for your cost of living, which is now doubled. What they're saying is they're actually citing like inflation and all the financial changes and so many things that have happened with the housing market. They are now saying that international students need to be better prepared to meet that actual cost of living in Canada, and so this might affect how much money you need to show before you get your visa. All that being said, guys, education is a right for all, and Canada always remains one of the best destinations to study, best destinations to work. And so I've always promoted Canada along with some of the other best nations to go and study at, and it is still there. So you might feel anxious or stressed out, but just understand that immigration is always up or down, that it comes and goes in waves. You cannot really predict much of how it's going to be 2 years from now. So don't worry too much, but of course make a very educated guess about your education and then take the step to your successful future. Thank you for joining me, and please share and subscribe to my channel, and this will help all of the students who are listening and your friends who are trying to travel abroad to study. That's my goal here and of my team at iSchool. So best of luck to all of you. Take care and have a great year ahead.